History has always been loud. It favors the clash of armies, the rise of kings, the moments that can be carved into stone and retold in simple lines. We are taught to remember victories, titles, and names that stood at the center of power. But beneath that noise, there is another kind of story, one that rarely announces itself and almost never asks to be remembered. True heroism is quiet. It unfolds far from podiums and headlines, in moments when no one is watching and no reward is promised. Real courage often appears not as a grand act, but as a decision made in solitude. To stay when leaving would be easier, to protect when ignoring would be safer, to act when silence would cost nothing. These moments pass quickly, unnoticed by history, yet they carry a weight that outlasts applause. The problem is not that heroes no longer exist. The problem is how we choose to remember. History prefers clean narratives and clear winners. It struggles with stories of restraint, sacrifice, and moral complexity. It overlooks the men and women who did not seek recognition, who never expected gratitude, and who understood that doing the right thing does not always come with a visible outcome. This story is about those people, the ones history rarely names, the ones whose strength was measured not by control, but by responsibility, not by what they took, but by what they chose not to do. These are the untold stories of true heroes, lived quietly, carried silently, and remembered not by monuments, but by the lives they shaped without ever asking to be seen. For most of our lives, we are taught to recognize heroism by its volume. We notice it when it announces itself, when it arrives with applause, headlines, or recognition. Glory, by its nature, wants witnesses. It seeks confirmation. It needs to be seen in order to feel real. And because of that, many people grow up believing that courage must also be loud, that it must arrive with public acknowledgement, visible risk, and unmistakable reward. But real courage doesn't work that way. True courage often shows up in moments so small and quiet that they barely register as history at all. It does not ask for witnesses. It does not wait for permission. It does not depend on whether anyone is paying attention. In fact, some of the most consequential acts of courage occur precisely because no one is watching. When there is no audience, no guarantee of praise, and no assurance that the choice being made will ever be understood. This is where glory and courage part ways. Glory thrives on recognition. It grows larger when it is named, shared, and remembered. Courage, on the other hand, exists just as fully in isolation. It can be present in a single decision made in silence, known only to the person making it. And that is why history so often confuses the two. It remembers the visible outcome but misses the invisible choice that made it possible. There is a moment most people encounter at least once in their lives. A moment where walking away would be reasonable, even defensible. A moment where disengaging would cost nothing socially and might even be applauded as practical. In business, it may be the moment when cutting a corner would never be discovered. In leadership, it might be the moment when shifting blame would preserve reputation. In personal life, it could be the moment when silence would avoid conflict entirely. Those moments rarely look heroic from the outside. They look ordinary, and yet, they are the crossroads where true heroism quietly forms. The hardest choices are often not between right and wrong, but between right and easy. Between doing what aligns with your values and doing what allows you to move on without friction. The courage to stay, to hold a line, to accept a cost, to act without applause, is not dramatic. It does not feel like a scene from a movie. It feels heavy, lonely, sometimes even foolish. And that is exactly why it matters. There are countless people who stayed when no one would remember their names. People who chose responsibility over recognition. Who understood that being seen was not the point. These are the stories history struggles to tell because they don't fit neatly into a victory narrative. There is no parade for the person who does the right thing and then goes home quietly. There is no statue for restraint. No monument for integrity maintained in private. And yet, without these moments, everything collapses. This is where the idea of heroism needs to be reframed, not as a transformation into something extraordinary, but as a continuation of something deeply ordinary. True heroes are rarely born exceptional. They are not waiting for destiny. They do not wake up one day suddenly courageous. They are farmers, teachers, tradespeople, parents, managers, founders, employees. People who have spent years making small, unremarkable choices that align with their values. When pressure arrives, those habits surface. Crisis does not create character. It reveals it. The person who keeps their word when it's inconvenient is the same person who stands firm when it's costly. The leader who listens when it would be easier to dominate is the same leader who absorbs blame instead of passing it downward. These behaviors don't appear out of nowhere. They are built slowly, long before the moment arrives that demands them. This is why the myth of sudden heroism is so misleading. We like stories where someone rises unexpectedly, transformed by circumstance. But real courage is not a switch that flips. It is continuity. It is the extension of values practiced quietly, daily, without ceremony. The person who shows up consistently, who acts with fairness when no one is forcing them to, who chooses restraint when excess is rewarded, that person is already practicing heroism, even if they never call it that. Daily courage rarely makes the news. It exists in conversations that never happen, deals that are walked away from, shortcuts that are refused. It exists in the long-term discipline of doing things the right way when the wrong way would be faster, cheaper, or more profitable in the short run. Over time, these choices shape a person. And when a moment of real consequence arrives, that shape becomes visible. For people who have lived long enough to see cycles repeat, economic booms and collapses, leadership rises and failures, cultural shifts and reversals, this truth resonates deeply. Experience teaches that the loudest figures are not always the most reliable, that the most celebrated leaders are not always the most trustworthy, and that the people who truly hold systems together are often the least visible. Heroism, reframed this way, stops being about spectacle and starts being about consistency. About showing up when it would be easier not to. About maintaining standards when standards feel outdated or inconvenient. About understanding that real influence does not come from being admired, but from being depended upon. This is where true heroes come from, not from moments of sudden bravery, but from lives shaped by quiet decisions made over years. Decisions to tell the truth when a lie would go unnoticed. To protect others when self-interest would be rewarded. To remain steady when chaos creates opportunity for exploitation. And perhaps most importantly, from the understanding that doing the right thing does not require an audience. In a culture that increasingly measures value by visibility, this kind of heroism can feel almost invisible. But it is the foundation everything else rests on. Businesses survive because someone refuses to cut ethical corners. Communities endure because someone steps up without needing credit. Families remain intact because someone chooses patience over pride. These are not extraordinary people in the traditional sense. They are ordinary people who have built extraordinary consistency. And when the question is finally asked, where do heroes come from? The answer is quieter than we expect. They come from habit, from values practiced in obscurity, from courage exercised daily, long before it is ever tested publicly. And that is why their stories are so often untold. When people imagine a hero, they often picture action, a decisive strike, a moment of dominance that ends a conflict and establishes victory. But there is another kind of hero, far less celebrated and far more difficult to understand, the one who chooses restraint, the one who has the power to act, the justification to act, and even the support to act, yet deliberately does not. Restraint is often mistaken for weakness because it produces no immediate spectacle. It leaves no dramatic image behind. But in reality, restraint requires a deeper form of strength. It demands control not over others, but over oneself. It requires the discipline to pause when instinct says strike, to consider consequence when momentum says move forward. There are moments when winning comes easily, but at a moral cost that is not immediately visible. In business, it might mean crushing a smaller competitor who poses no real threat. In leadership, it could mean using authority to silence dissent instead of listening to it. In personal conflict, it may mean delivering a final blow simply because one can. These victories feel satisfying in the short term. They close the chapter quickly, but they leave something damaged behind: trust, dignity, humanity. The hero who chooses restraint understands that not all victories are worth claiming, that some forms of winning hollow out the very thing they are meant to protect. Preserving humanity, one's own and that of others, sometimes requires stepping back from an outcome that looks successful on paper but feels wrong at the core. History struggles with this idea. It prefers heroes who conquer rather than those who restrain themselves. But in the long arc of human systems, families, companies, nations, it is restraint that prevents cycles of retaliation and collapse. The courage not to strike, not to exploit, not to dominate, is often what allows others to survive with dignity intact. And yet, those who practice this kind of heroism are rarely remembered. Many of the people who hold the world together do so quietly. They are forgotten heroes not because their contributions were small, but because they were steady. They endured rather than dazzled. They chose consistency over spectacle. They showed up day after day, carrying burdens that never made headlines and sacrifices that never became stories. History tends to name the disruptors, the conquerors, the ones who changed everything in a single moment. But it overlooks those who prevented collapse by maintaining order over time. The managers who shielded their teams from pressure. The parents who absorbed hardships so their children could move forward. The workers who kept systems functioning through patience and reliability rather than innovation or force. This invisible labor is the backbone of every functioning society. It is not glamorous. It does not trend. But without it, nothing else stands. Sustained sacrifice over time is harder than a single act of bravery. It requires endurance, humility, and the willingness to remain unseen. There is no finish line where applause awaits, only the quiet knowledge that things did not fall apart because someone refused to let them. And often, that refusal comes at a personal cost. Moral courage, unlike physical courage, is deeply lonely. It does not rally crowds. It frequently isolates the person who practices it. Standing against an obvious enemy can unite people. Standing against one's own group, against colleagues, peers, friends, or allies, does the opposite. It separates. It marks the individual as difficult, disloyal, or disruptive. There are moments when silence is safer, when going along preserves belonging, when speaking up risks reputation, livelihood, or relationships built over years. Moral courage asks a person to weigh integrity against acceptance, and to choose integrity knowing full well what may be lost. For many, the greatest test is not facing opposition from strangers, but disappointing those whose approval matters most. It is refusing to nod along when something feels wrong. It is asking an uncomfortable question in a room that prefers comfort. It is declining to compromise values even when compromise is presented as loyalty. Integrity, in these moments, becomes a form of exile. The person who speaks is often left standing alone, stripped of the protection that comes from consensus. And there is no guarantee that time will vindicate them. Sometimes, doing the right thing results not in redemption, but in quiet disappearance. Yet this is precisely where true heroism lives. Not in the assurance of reward, but in the willingness to act without it. Leadership, in its most authentic form, often looks nothing like authority. It does not require a title or a position. It emerges in moments when someone steps forward simply because no one else will. When someone absorbs pressure so others can continue functioning. When responsibility is accepted without command being granted. Leadership without power is easy to overlook because it lacks formal recognition. But it is often more influential than leadership enforced through hierarchy. Trust, once earned, carries more weight than obedience demanded. People follow those who protect them, who listen, who remain steady under strain. Some of the most effective leaders are barely visible. They step forward in crisis, guide others through uncertainty, and then step back once stability returns. They do not linger in the spotlight. They do not build their identity around control. Their goal is not to be remembered, but to leave things intact. This kind of leadership requires an unusual relationship with ego. It demands the ability to let go of recognition, to allow others to take credit, to disappear once the work is done. For many, this is harder than holding power, because power offers validation. Anonymity does not. And yet, the hero without sword, title, or glory understands something essential, that influence is not measured by visibility, but by impact. By what continues after they are gone. By what does not break. When stripped of weapons, authority, and applause, heroism reveals its true shape. It looks like restraint instead of domination, endurance instead of spectacle, integrity instead of belonging, leadership that serves rather than commands. It looks like ordinary people making extraordinary choices quietly, consistently, and often alone. And that is the answer to the question we rarely ask. What does a hero look like when there is nothing to gain? They look like someone who does the right thing anyway. There is a comforting myth we are taught early in life, that doing the right thing leads, eventually, to being rewarded. That courage is recognized. That sacrifice is repaid. That if you stand on principle long enough, the world will come around and thank you. For many true heroes, this moment never arrives. Heroism is not fairly rewarded, and in many cases, it is not rewarded at all. The stories that endure in popular memory are carefully edited versions of reality, trimmed of discomfort and consequence. They show the decisive moment, the moral clarity, the triumph. What they rarely show is what follows, the cost that lingers long after the applause fades, if it ever comes. For some heroes, the price is immediate and devastating. Careers end. Reputations collapse. Relationships fracture. Others pay more slowly over years through isolation, regret, or the quiet erosion of opportunity. The world does not pause to compensate those who act from conscience. In fact, it often moves on as if nothing extraordinary occurred. The high cost of conscience is that it rarely negotiates. It does not ask whether the timing is convenient, whether the consequences are survivable, or whether the person standing on principle is ready to lose what they have built. It simply insists. Many heroes act knowing full well that their decision may lead to loss. They do not confuse courage with optimism. They understand that tragedy, not triumph, is often the more likely outcome. And still, they proceed, not because they expect victory, but because they cannot live comfortably with the alternative. This is where the romantic idea of heroism begins to fracture. Real heroism is not a guarantee of success. It is a commitment to principle over outcome, to doing what is right even when it fails, even when it costs everything, even when the story ends quietly, without resolution. For an older audience, this truth resonates deeply. With time comes the understanding that life rarely delivers clean endings, that the moral arc does not always bend within a single lifetime, that sometimes the best decisions look like mistakes to everyone else, and remain so forever. And yet, these decisions still matter. History is full of heroes who were only recognized long after they were gone, if at all. But there are many more whose names were never recovered. People who did what was necessary in their moment and disappeared into ordinary life, carrying the consequences alone. Their heroism did not change the world dramatically. It prevented something worse from happening. It held a line. It slowed a collapse. It preserved a small pocket of dignity where none was guaranteed. That kind of heroism rarely fits into monuments. After the moment passes, after the decision is made, the stand is taken, the sacrifice is complete. Life does not stop. Bills still arrive. Relationships still require attention. The world expects continuity. For the hero, this can be the most disorienting phase of all. There is no ceremony for returning to ordinary life. The adrenaline fades. The clarity dissolves. What remains is memory. And memory, unlike applause, does not validate. It questions. It replays. It asks whether things could have been done differently, whether the cost was justified, whether anyone else would have chosen the same path. Many heroes do not see themselves as heroes at all. They see themselves as people who were placed in an impossible position and made the least unbearable choice. They return to their routines carrying experiences that cannot be easily shared. Not because they are secretive, but because language feels insufficient. How do you explain a decision that altered your life when, on the surface, nothing seems to have changed? Living with unshared memories is one of the hidden burdens of heroism. Friends and colleagues may sense a difference but not understand it. The hero may appear unchanged, even successful, while internally carrying weight that has no outlet. This is especially true for those who acted alone, without witnesses or validation. In many cases, speaking about the experience feels inappropriate or self-serving. Silence becomes a form of respect. For those affected, for the complexity of the moment, for the fact that heroism was never meant to be a performance. And yet, silence can also become isolating. The hidden weight of heroism is that it must be carried forward, not resolved. There is rarely closure. No final chapter where everything makes sense. Instead, there is integration, the slow, imperfect process of weaving that moment into a life that continues. For people in midlife and beyond, this feels familiar. There are decisions made decades earlier that still echo quietly. Choices that shaped careers, families, identities. Moments where one path was taken and another closed forever. Not all of these decisions were heroic in the traditional sense, but they required the same kind of courage, to accept consequence without certainty. This is why the aftermath of heroism matters more than the act itself. The world is full of people who did the right thing once. It is rarer to find those who lived with that decision afterward, absorbing its consequences with grace. Who did not become bitter. Who did not demand recognition as compensation for loss. Who continued to act with integrity even after learning that integrity does not guarantee reward. These people understand something essential, that heroism is not an event, but a cost-bearing posture toward life. They know that meaning is not assigned by applause, but by alignment between action and conscience. That peace does not come from being proven right, but from being able to live with oneself. And perhaps this is the most honest legacy of true heroes. Not that they were celebrated, not that they were remembered, but that they remained whole in a world that often rewards compromise and punishes restraint. Their stories do not end with triumph. They end with continuity, with ordinary mornings and quiet evenings, with lives that move forward, altered but intact, with the knowledge that something mattered enough to pay a price for it, and that the price was paid willingly. For those who have lived long enough to understand loss, consequence, and the complexity of right and wrong, this kind of heroism feels deeply human. It does not inspire awe. It invites recognition. Because in the end, most heroism does not look like a peak. It looks like a long road afterward. We live in a world that is louder than it has ever been. Attention has become currency. Visibility is treated as value. The modern world rewards those who can perform convincingly, who can frame their actions in ways that attract applause, clicks, or approval. In such an environment, heroism has been reshaped into something theatrical. It is expected to be dramatic, immediate, and above all, visible. And yet, the challenges that define our time are not solved by spectacle. They are solved quietly, incrementally, often without witnesses. They are solved by people who carry responsibility long after the spotlight has moved on, if it ever arrived at all. This is why the untold stories of true heroes matter today more than ever. Quiet courage feels invisible in a culture obsessed with performance. It does not trend. It does not announce itself. It rarely fits into the clean narratives we prefer. As a result, it is often mistaken for passivity, weakness, or irrelevance. But that misinterpretation comes from confusion, not truth. Real courage has never depended on being seen. In fact, some of the most meaningful acts of courage occur precisely because no audience is present. They happen in boardrooms where ethical shortcuts are refused, in families where responsibility is shouldered without complaint, in communities where someone steps in not because it benefits them, but because someone has to. Modern challenges, systemic pressure, moral ambiguity, social fragmentation, do not require new virtues. They require old ones, applied consistently in unfamiliar conditions. Integrity, restraint, responsibility, the willingness to act without guarantees. These qualities are not outdated. They are simply unfashionable. And yet, they remain indispensable. For those who have spent decades building something, a business, a career, a family, this truth is deeply recognizable. You know that real impact is rarely immediate, that the decisions that matter most often feel anticlimactic at the time, that what endures is not the moment of recognition, but the long-term consequences of choosing wisely under pressure. Impact does not require fame. It requires alignment. History is shaped less by those who are celebrated loudly than by those who hold things together quietly. The people who prevent collapse rarely receive credit, because the absence of disaster is difficult to commemorate. And yet, their influence is real. It is structural. It is lasting. This understanding shifts how we see heroism. It moves it closer. It removes it from distant pedestals and places it within reach. True heroes are not abstract figures from another era. They exist around us. They may not even realize the role they play. They are the ones who accept responsibility when deflection would be easier, who absorb pressure so others do not have to, who choose honesty in environments that reward convenience. They are the colleague who refuses to compromise standards, the leader who steps aside rather than clings to control, the individual who protects someone more vulnerable, knowing there will be no recognition for doing so. These acts are not dramatic. They are decisive. Recognizing this kind of heroism changes something important. It shifts us from admiration to emulation. Admiration is passive. It allows us to praise courage without practicing it. Emulation is different. It asks what kind of person we are becoming, not what kind of story we enjoy hearing. It challenges us to consider where responsibility is being avoided, where silence is being chosen for comfort, where restraint is being mistaken for weakness. This is not an accusation. It is an invitation. The untold stories of true heroes are not meant to intimidate or inspire guilt. They are meant to clarify what is possible. They remind us that heroism is not a title to be claimed, but a posture toward life, one that becomes visible only when tested. For an older audience, this perspective carries particular weight. With experience comes the awareness that life is not about peak moments, but about patterns. About who we are when things become complicated. About how we act when the rules are unclear and the outcomes uncertain. Heroism, in this sense, is not a single act. It is consistency under pressure. It is choosing to matter quietly. And perhaps this is the most important realization of all, that heroism does not require a stage. It does not ask for permission. It does not wait for perfect conditions. It shows up wherever responsibility is present and conscience is awake. This is why these stories endure, even when they are not recorded. They continue not because they were told loudly, but because they were lived fully. They shape the moral environment around them, often invisibly, like a foundation that is never seen but always felt. In the end, history may continue to shout the names of conquerors. It may celebrate speed, scale, and spectacle. But beneath that noise, something quieter persists. A record not of dominance, but of dignity. Not of victory, but of restraint. Not of fame, but of fidelity to principle. These are the stories that matter when the applause fades. These are the stories that still speak when the world grows quiet. And these are the stories that remind us that heroism has never been about being remembered loudly, only about mattering deeply when it counted most. History has always had a strong voice. It announces victories, elevates names, and simplifies the past into stories that are easy to repeat. But beneath that noise, there is another record being kept, one that does not shout. It whispers. It speaks in the language of integrity, restraint, and responsibility. These are the moments history rarely frames, yet they are the ones that quietly shape everything that follows. True heroism, as we've seen, is not an identity to claim or a title to wear. It is an action taken when no one is watching, often at personal cost, and without any guarantee of recognition. It is choosing what is right over what is rewarded. It is staying when leaving would be easier, protecting when exploiting would be more profitable, and holding the line when silence would feel safer. The impact of such choices is rarely loud. There are no monuments for restraint. No headlines for moral courage. And yet, these actions endure in subtler ways, in lives redirected, damage prevented, trust preserved. To matter in this way is to influence the future without insisting on being remembered by it. For those who have spent a lifetime building, leading, and deciding under pressure, this truth resonates deeply. You know that what lasts is not applause, but alignment with principle. Not visibility, but consequence. If these untold stories of true heroes spoke to you, consider subscribing to this channel. We explore history, leadership, and human character beyond the surface, stories meant not just to inform, but to stay with you. And if there is a moment in your own life where quiet courage made a difference, share it in the comments. Because sometimes, the most meaningful stories are the ones history whispers, and we remember together.